Another Sales Wisdom podcast with Mason Cosby. He is director of demand generation at Sales Assembly. We're going to talk sales, communities, podcasting, GTM, and everything in between. Mason, glad to have you on. Can you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about your company?
Yeah, so like it said, I'm director of demand gen for a company called Sales Assembly. And really what we provide is skill development for the entire go-to-market team. So not to drone on too long about the data, but essentially 70% of people don't have the skills that they need to do their jobs effectively. And when you look at that, uh, means that really no matter how you look at it, you can throw more tech at it, you can, do your massive SKO, but at the end of the day, like people just don't have those foundational skills, and we're seeing it reflected in the revenue. So all that to say, what we provide is that foundational skill development. So I'm really passionate about it personally. We'll dive into it, but I've been able to grow my career because I've had incredible mentors. I've had a lot of great education through online resources. But at the end of the day, I literally worked 80 hours a week between day job and self-education to find the right resources. And what I love about Sales Assembly is it's just provided for you. So that is a nutshell of what we do.
And it's like two in one. So you work and you learn at the same time at Sales Assembly. If I would want to be a member at Sales Assembly, what's the dealio? What would I get for what cost?
Yeah, so we are a little bit different than a lot of the other skill development providers. So many organizations focus on kind of an individual license. Our platform is actually sold to commercial organizations. So we're a strictly B2B organization. So if you have 20 to 40 people that would be involved in the skill development for, again, your go-to-market team, you're looking at about a $20,000 investment. If you've got more than 40, so anywhere over 40, it's about 25. And then if you've got less than 20, we're looking at about 15. So we typically shoot for anywhere in that like $500 to $1,000 per team member, because that is really where you see a great investment in the return for those dollars. And then what you get is we've got about 15 different roles across the go-to-market team that we specialize in serving. So over the course of a year, you would have all of the foundational skills taught for the individual roles. That's SDR, AE, enterprise AE, leaders across both like just general sales leadership plus BDR leadership plus then overarching revenue leadership. So we've done a lot of research with industry experts, and also just we've got about 200 B2B tech companies that are already active members, and just also surveying them and asking them, what are the skill gaps that your team members are experiencing? So then we go and find experts and plug them into the program. And again, to give you context, we've got speakers like Sam McKenna, Todd Capone, Jen Allen Knuth. And if you go to try to hire a lot of our facilitators as SKO speakers, you'd probably spend more for their one-day session than you would buying the Sales Assembly platform for your entire team for the entire year. So it's a pretty great value when you truly compare it against other ways of developing skill development content.
Right. I want to start with your background. You learned the craft at an agency. I love talking about agencies. They're one of my favorite models. You can test out and experiment a lot and hopefully produce SaaS or more solid business models out of them. So what did you learn from your time at an agency?
Yeah, I mean, prior to working in an agency, the really foundational skills that I had around marketing were brand messaging and narrative storytelling. But as far as like, how do you take a brand message and how do you take a narrative story of inviting your customer into this journey of them being the hero and helping them overcome their challenges, like all that philosophical stuff, I didn't know how to tactically implement it. So I just knew, okay, we need to have the right messaging, the right positioning, which is all correct and true, and we needed those things. But through the agency experience, I learned how to use HubSpot. I mean, just to get really practical, I learned what account-based marketing is, and I have fallen in love with it. I talk about account-based marketing all the time. And the other piece is I really learned the value of relationship-based selling. So during my agency experience, I started of marketing the agency in and of itself. So I marketed marketing to marketers. And then about a year and a half in, we got acquired, and I transitioned into a bit of a hybrid marketing and sales role. And when I transitioned into that role, what I ended up finding is that because I had been creating so much content, because I had been so actively engaged in the account-based marketing community, when people needed an ABM program, they would come to me and then they'd continue that relationship with me in the sales process. And since leaving, I've actually spoken with a number of friends that were customers that I ended up selling while I was there. And they said to me, we actually trusted Gravity because we trusted you, Mason. And again, the irony there is I learned most of what I know today from that agency. So again, it's not that I was just this incredible thought leader that brought so much education to this agency and upskilled everything that they knew. I, I know how to use social pretty well. I learned what I know from that agency experience, shared it publicly. People started to trust me, and that trust transitioned over to the agency. So just seeing how people buy in the modern day, I think is honestly the greatest lesson that I learned outside of just how do you tactically build automation in HubSpot.
You've got laid off after engaging and buying a first house. How did you get through that challenge?
Yeah, so I mean, this was before agency experience. So to get a little bit more context, I was a seller, and then when COVID hit, we lost the ability to sell our product because it was a print magazine that was distributed to the public and private school system. So when schools shut down, no distribution model. So admittedly, it was two things. One, I attribute this time to a lot of kind of the drive that I have, because when you've made a promise to somebody that you're going to be able to take care of them, and you've made a promise to their family that you're going to take care of them, it's no longer just about ensuring, am I going to be provided for? Am I going to be able to eat? It's now, I need to provide for a couple of people. So from that perspective, just recognizing I've got to get a job, I've got to land somewhere. So honestly, the story of the marketer that fell into it, that is very classically my story. I was just applying to anything and everything. I applied to about 1,000 jobs. Not as an exaggeration, did I think over 150 interviews, and then ended up getting a job offer from a fintech company. And I accepted the job very well knowing that I did not have the skills to do the job. Again, I had been working in print ad sales, and I was hired on as their first marketing hire to build a digital strategy in the midst of COVID. I didn't know what to do. So that's when I really dove deep into all of this online learning. If you go look at my LinkedIn, I've got over 60 different certifications, just because I did every certification I could get my hands on that was free. So that's how I really got through the time, is recognizing like there's really no other option. Like I've got to make something happen. I didn't feel confident enough at the time to go and launch a business, so I knew I needed to get a job somewhere. And once I landed the job, I knew, okay, I don't actually have the skills to do this job, but I have to keep this job. So let me go figure out how to get those skills.
Every job that I checked on your LinkedIn seems like you generated massive revenue. For example, I checked Mojo Media Lab there, 1.68 million in marketing source deals, 3.29 mil in sourced opportunities, conversion rate of 59%. Seems like you're pretty good ROI for most businesses.
I try to be. There's I'm now at the point where I'm trying to be a little bit more healthy around the amount of hours that I work. Because again, no, I mean, to be perfectly blunt about it, I think that layoff experience was actually pretty traumatic for me.
Yeah.
And the next work environment was also a fairly toxic work environment. When I put in my notice, my CEO called me into his office and said that I was a waste of his time and a waste of his space, and that I would never ever accomplish anything. So again, I
Oh my
had
God, fuck that.
it was less than a pleasant experience. So that was a year and a half of my life between COVID, layoff, getting married, and then actually while I was on my honeymoon, I'm fairly confident that they were interviewing to replace me.
Yeah.
So I just through all of that have invested a lot of time specifically into this industry with the intent that no matter where I go, I can at least drive some level of tangible value so that I'm always employable. So, that has resulted in some 60 to 80-hour weeks, but I'm now at the point where I am trying to transition into building more scalable, sustainable programs so that I don't lead myself into another round of burnout.
Right. That had me think of when Elon Musk was on his honeymoon and they kicked him out of PayPal, literally as CEO. So imagine and that was like very chess strategies, like with David Sachs that you see on the All In podcast and Peter Thiel. They were planning to, and then they execute on their plan. Actually, it's really sneaky, you know. I think sometimes people need to understand that business is also personal. It's like who you are. And when you do these actions, it tells a lot about the kind of human that you are. And yeah, if you believe in anything, the karma, well, it's not good karma for them for sure. Now, yes, and I know that the pre-traumatic experience, if it's on your LinkedIn, and it's very hard. But I think it's also life, every time when you celebrate too much or when you expect that everything will be easy, it's like pretty hard. It's not only you, it's like yeah, I've had these moments countless of time on my side, and yeah, you just get up. I'm just curious though, like me, first, I'm a radically independent kid, and I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I started a decade ago, and I one strong reason that I am an entrepreneur, I co-founded an agency with my first mentor, and I owned, I think, 30% of that agency. Was more a financial sponsor, and I was running the whole show. And I got kind of fed up with that and was like, I'm gonna start my own stuff. And I left him to start my own thing, and so that no one could tell me what to do, right? Because I feel that I had it in me. Does it ever come up in your mind to start your own stuff, and be fully entrepreneurial?
I mean, I grew up the son of an entrepreneur, so admittedly, every boss that I've ever had has said that I would likely start a business at some point. I really enjoy what I do, so it's not something I am looking at doing in any kind of a full-time capacity right now. Because actually, Sales Assembly has taken great care of me. So they are very much so. I threw out the idea of, on my paternity leave, because I'm expecting my first in August, like
Congrats.
kind of working like half time to make sure that things kept going. And they're like, no, like you're going to go take off a full month. Like, and I've only worked here for 5 months. So to let an employee take off a month for pat leave when they're 5 months into their role is just a really great organization. So from that perspective, will I eventually inevitably start a business? I would say that it's highly likely. What that business will be, I don't know, because I have actually found about myself that I don't know if you follow Alex Hormozy, but he has thrown out the idea of like there's really three kinds of entrepreneurs. There's the artist, the hybrid, and the business person. And the artist just loves their craft and they want to do everything in their power to just continue to execute on their craft. And the way in which they scale is by increasing their price, but not the volume in which they do. The hybrid is the person that loves their craft, but recognizes in order to continue to grow this thing, they need to actually have scale. So that's the kind of person that, let's say, if I were a hybrid, I would always want to own specifically marketing. So I could start a business and be the CMO of that business and then actually hire a CEO over me to, kind of make the executive decisions outside of marketing. And then there's the person that's just a business person, and their art form is building businesses themselves. Admittedly, I'm trying to figure out if I'm a hybrid or a business person because I love marketing, but I just truly enjoy and thrive in business strategy conversations. So again, from that perspective, will I inevitably likely start a business? Probably. I do some very light freelancing consulting work as it is, just by the nature that I'm engaged in this community. But what that business would be, I think I need to figure out what the greatest gap in the market is that I individually could solve and build a market of one before I would go and launch anything like that. And I think that is years and years away, especially with my first on the way. I'd like to probably at least have a little bit more stability for right now.
Right. Sales is so entrepreneurial anyways. You deal with a bunch of sales folks. You also deal with sales execs. You deal with CEOs themselves. What common problem do you see in their sales department?
Yeah, I mean the common problem is twofold. One, it's you've got sellers. Let me actually take one step back. Um, they don't have a clarified even sales strategy. So are we going to build a sales org that is essentially these really highly intelligent subject matter experts that can truly guide someone through a sales process, and they're going to build deep and meaningful relationships in the organ or in the industry, and they're going to sell based off of expertise and relationships? Or are we going to have what would be, I would say, a more standardly scalable program that is we hire people to fill a very specific role, and then we scale based on headcount and upskilling that team? So I think what I'm seeing in a lot of people is they run the actual like scalable program, but they expect them to be relationship based sellers where they develop these great relationships and they have this industry expertise, and they're hiring 22-year-olds to speak to 30-year veterans about the industry as kind of the first interaction. And the reality is like that's not going to work. So I think the first thing is that you have to understand what strategy are we running, and then out of that strategy, then actually be able to set realistic goals. If you want to run with the more scalable strategy, like you're going to have likely a lower conversion metric. If you want to run more relationship based sales, it's going to be probably a longer sales cycle, but you'll have higher conversions, and that's okay. You just have to understand what you're trying to accomplish and then set goals accordingly. So that's the first thing. The second thing is once you've actually decided on your strategy, then actually providing the level of support that is needed. So if you're running the more scalable approach, with lower conversion metrics and more of a, we're going to just try to fill our pipeline and see generally more what shakes out. You need to have more marketing collaboration, more sales enablement content, and essentially you need to build out a really fantastic process. I don't know if you know Todd Capone, he's a sales leader, but he walks
Love
through
the
essentially
guy
he's incredible, but
from
he
Montreal too.
oh, I didn't even know that. So something
Or
to
I think
mention next
so. Yeah,
time.
I think so.
Um, but he walked through essentially when he was a CRO, the literal only cold call he'd ever picked up was he started to hire an SDR organization in Chicago. And this company that was a recruiting company sent him nothing about, hey, we offer recruiting services, but they said, hey, we saw you were hiring SDRs. Here's an SDR salary guide for the city of Chicago to help you understand what SDRs that you would be hiring would be expecting. And then 2 weeks later, it was the end of the quarter. And then they sent him another email that just said, hey, hope your quarter ended well. I know you're going to have board reports coming up. Here's a templatized board deck that should help your board preparation go a little bit faster. And then he clicked on their website because he was like, I don't know who they are, what they sell, but they've just provided two really helpful, valuable things for me. Like, who are they? Clicked through to their website, and then they probably had some level of tracking technology to see that he was on their website. He then got a call and then answered that cold call. So again, with that scalable strategy, the SDR had no personal brand in that case, actually showcased no specific individual industry authority, but what he was equipped with was the resources to showcase that the brand in and of itself had industry authority. So again, if you're going to go that more scalable route, then that's like you have to provide that kind of content in those processes to make this successful. The other route, again, is if you go more relationship based, you still need some level of process around it, but the main goal is actually showcasing your industry expertise. So it's actually that balance of more, you probably want a thought leadership approach where you're actually developing a thought leader that also then happens to be the person that is sitting in the sales seat. So again, from that perspective, you're probably not going to build a $1 billion business, but you can likely build a very healthy, smaller organization. And that's like, I actually took the second approach when I was in sales. And if you see my LinkedIn, like that's how we were able to sell 1.7 million in 6 months, because we had taken 18 months to build personal industry authority and expertise so that when people came inbound, they already trusted me. And then I was walking them through the product. But there wasn't a question, can we accomplish these things? They already knew that we could. I was selling them then on the exact process that we would go through to accomplish those goals. Longer sales cycle, but also higher deal values. And realistically, those higher deal values accounted for the longer sales cycles. So it ended up all kind of panning out.
You're pretty bullish on content, had your own pod, you're about to start a new one. Why? And also how? I read a post about the tools you were using. I'm checking them out right now. What's your magic system that can get a bunch of views? People see that you are putting value out there, and you have some kind of funnel. Like once they respect your point of view, like what do you do with these folks? Is it all about trust winning, and you let them organically talk about sales assembly?
So it's a mix of a variety of things. One, 2 years ago, I would say, yeah, we're going to let it organically happen, and that was a strategy that I ran. It is a longer tail strategy, but what you end up doing is essentially by educating people. Janelle Knuth has been talking a lot about this, and I love her framing of I'm just presenting the problems and letting people come to their own conclusions. And when they realize how bad their problem is, they'll have the idea themselves, but they'll remember who gave them the information and they'll come back to the source. So that is the approach that I had run for about 2 years. And admittedly, like that's longer tail. It's going to take more time. But again, once somebody actually then enters into pipeline, they actually move relatively quickly. So from that perspective, that is, I think, the ideal strategy. The challenge is right now in our current economic environment. I mean, we've been talking with a number of sales leaders because again, our community is about 200 B2B tech companies strong. So we're talking with 40, 50, 70 CROs on a monthly basis, just getting a pulse on what's happening. And we've heard from a number of them that like, it doesn't matter what it is. We've just completely frozen our budgets for the next 2 quarters. We're not going to buy anything new until Q4, which is fine for us with those existing members. But as we look at expansion, they're not looking to buy. Or if we look, when I say expansion, let me reframe that. As we look at new customer acquisition and expanding the member base, then they're just not going to buy. So what we're doing right now to try to be a little bit more proactive is, again, let's start at the top of the funnel. It is that content creation. So we're doing 2 things specifically around content creation. That would be niche podcast guesting. So we're sending our executive team on a variety of specifically sales podcasts to dive into, again, the just the skill gap that is very prevalent across B2B tech and how that's directly impacting revenue. And then from there, we can recreate all of that content. So they go on somebody else's podcast, or we do have a weekly series that we're interviewing CROs specifically around kind of the skill gaps that they're solving for. From there, we can recreate all of that content into social posts. We can recreate them into videos, into blog content. We're about to launch our newsletter that'll launch in about a week. So again, that podcast and those audio recordings actually translate into all of the forms of content. And then we're publishing that on social with the intent that every social post has a link in the comments that leads to something else. So, hey, watch this clip. If you enjoy this clip, here's actually a longer session with our monthly workshop that we do called Sales and Stuff and Things with Todd Capone, Janelle Knuth, Sam McKenna, and Matt Green, talking about a variety of sales leadership topics. Hey, if you like this clip, go check out this podcast. Hey, if you liked this data dump, go check out the full blog. And again, everything's linking back to something else with the intent that we pull our audiences off of LinkedIn into longer form content. And then also, based off of the engagement that we're seeing on the posts, depending on the kind of post that it is, we then do outbound sequencing towards ICP fit people that are engaging. So again, if somebody's posting a clip of one of our monthly live sessions, I'm outbounding towards them and saying, hey, thank you so much for engaging in this clip. Just want to make you aware, like this is a monthly session that we're doing. We've got our next one on this date. Just wanted to send you a link in the event that you wanted to join us live. Again, driving the awareness, driving people actually to come to these live events. If it's a specific like data dump type clip or a product clip, because again, we're a skills development company. So if we're diving into a very tactical framework around how do you reduce churn, what we then do is say, hey, thanks so much for engaging with this content. And then we actually built an ungated tour page so that you can experience the platform and it's got a ton of clips on it that are skills development content clips. So you can get an experience for what it's like to be a sales assembly member. So we then filter people into a DM sequence that is driving them towards that page. So again, we've got a marketing outreach sequence and a sales outreach sequence. We're not asking anybody to schedule a call. We're just saying essentially like, hey, look, if you liked this, we have more of this. And what we've seen through that is, again, we've been doing that for about 3 months, and there used to be no inbound pipe. And started in March. In April, we had 6 inbounds. May, we had 5. June to date, we've had 8. So again, going from 0 inbounds to just over 20 with an organization that has the goal to sell 100 deals on an annual basis. That's only going to continue to increase. So we're looking on a trend of probably getting closer to like 12 to 15 inbounds through that funnel.
Crazy, man. So inspiring. So much work to do on my side, and it's pretty amazing the funnels you can do if you think about it in a different way. I really like your content as well. See, there's strong interaction there. Hopefully, I'll get you more in my LinkedIn feed. Until then, where can people find out more about you, Mason?
Yeah, I mean, the main one is going to be LinkedIn. So I post a ton around specifically account-based marketing content. And if you want more specific sales content, I'd highly recommend going and giving Jeff Rossett, Matt Green, Brad Rosen, or Tanner Lacey a follow. They all work for Sales Assembly. And then lastly, I did throw out that we have an ungated demo of our platform. So again, if you are in that camp where you're looking at your sales team or your CS team and saying there's a pretty clear gap just in their foundational skills, we can help with that at a very affordable price. So go check out salesassembly.com/tour to get an experience.